Ah, Barolo. They call it the king of wines, right? And that name, it just screams power, prestige, and honestly, a whole lot of confusion. So let's get into it. Because to really get Barolo, you've got to understand this system that's, well, it's brilliant, but it's also wonderfully complicated. I mean, have you ever just stared at a Barolo label and felt totally lost? Yeah, you're not alone. You see all these names, Busia, Canubi, Roque, and you're just thinking, okay, what does any of this actually mean? Is this one supposed to be better than that one? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock just a little bit. So before 2010, it was basically the Wild West. Imagine this. Producers could pretty much slap any prestigious-sounding vineyard name on their label, and there were no real rules, no legal definitions. A famous name could just be stretched to cover a bigger area or used really loosely. You can see how this would cause a ton of confusion for anyone just trying to figure out what they were actually buying. So to fix all this, the authorities finally stepped in. They came up with an official system, something designed to finally bring some order to all that chaos. And that system is called MGA, which stands for Menzione Geografica Aggiuntiva. The easiest way to think about it, it's basically Italy's answer to the French cru system. You know, it's a way of officially mapping out and defining these very specific, geographically distinct vineyard areas. And all in all, there are 181 of them. But listen, this was not an overnight fix, not even close. The process of actually defining all 181 of these MGAs, it took 20 years. 20 years of intense work, getting all the local towns and communes to agree on where to draw the lines on the map. I mean, it was a massive, monumental effort to bring some sanity to the region. So, problem solved, right? Everything's clear now? Well, not exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. Because the system they created, it actually introduced a whole new set of complications. You see, the MGA system isn't some simple quality pyramid. Okay, so here's the absolute key thing you need to understand. Unlike, say, Burgundy, where you've got that clear hierarchy, Grand Cru at the top, then Premier Cru, and so on, the MGA system has no official ranking. None. All 181 MGAs are, in the eyes of the law, 100% equal. And to see why that's a big deal, just look at the wild differences in size. It's kind of crazy. You've got the Busia MGA. It's enormous, almost 300 hectares. But then you look over at a place like Castiglione Folletto, and all 20 of its MGAs are under 25 hectares each. So, I mean, how can you even begin to compare a vast area like Busia with one of those tiny, super specific plots? And it's not just about size. It's also about the dirt, the soil itself. See, the geology in Barolo basically creates two totally different styles of wine. You have the younger Tortonian soils, think Lamora, and those give you more elegant, aromatic wines. Then you have the older Helvetian soils, like in Serralunga, and those produce these intense, structured, powerful wines that really need years to come around. So right away, an MGA name is often telling you more about the style of the wine, not necessarily its flat-out quality. But believe it or not, the story doesn't even end there. The very laws that brought the MGA system to life, well, they also created some pretty major contradictions and, yeah, some big controversies. This quote from producer Marta Rinaldi really just hits the nail on the head. For centuries, some of the absolute best Barolos were made by blending grapes from a few different top vineyards to create this perfectly balanced wine. It was a tradition. But when the MGA system came in, a pesky European Union law pretty much killed that practice overnight. Just like she says, you're not allowed to list the different MGAs you blended from on the label anymore. And get this, here's the craziest contradiction of all. So you're forbidden from telling the wine drinker, hey, I blended this from 3 amazing MGAs. But that same law allows a producer to take their wine from a single MGA and secretly add up to 15% of wine from a totally different MGA without mentioning it at all. It's this bizarre loophole that kind of defeats the whole purpose of being transparent, doesn't it? And then there was the whole mess with Canubi, which is probably Barolo's most famous hill, right? When they were drawing all these new maps, the historic boundaries of Canubi they got bigger. They were stretched to include a bunch of neighboring subzones. So what does that mean? It means wines from historically separate spots, like Canubi Boschi's, can now just be labeled as Canubi. And that, of course, really waters down the meaning of one of the most legendary names in all of wine. Okay, so with all these complications and loopholes, you're probably wondering, how in the world do you find the real gems? How do you spot a wine that you know comes from one of the absolute best, most specific plots of land? Well, there's one more word you need to look for.
I mean, if the MGA name itself can refer to a massive area, or be legally blended, or have its borders redrawn, what's the actual clue that you're holding a true single vineyard wine?
The answer is that little word, Vigna. And this chart right here really tells the whole story. Just look at the rules. A wine that has Vigna, which just means vineyard, on the label, it has to come from a specific registered plot inside an MGA. And more importantly, it has to meet tougher production standards. The yield is lower and the minimum alcohol is higher. Both of those are classic signs of higher quality grapes. So here's the big takeaway. When you see Vigna on a Barolo label, that's your signal. That's how you know you're holding a wine from a precisely defined single piece of land that had to clear a higher bar for quality. That is the ultimate mark of specificity in Barolo. You could say it's the real crew. So in the end, the MGA system, with all its quirks and complications, it really gave us a new language to talk about the incredible land of Barolo. It's a system that was born out of chaos. And yeah, it's full of contradictions. But ultimately, it brings us one step closer to understanding the soil. So next time you pick up a bottle, you're not just reading a label, you're reading its history. And now, you know the code.